GGS idea was at this particular point, but I suppose it was enough that he felt confident putting it into his videos. Eventually, he said that he considered this video the first part of a 6-episode anthology project that was his life's magnum opus. But we'll get to that. The second video, of a total of just 4 videos he uploaded that entire year, was called Search for Remember, which Randy says was the ultimate cause of his demise. The story behind the video revolves around Remember, the song Ember sang in Danny Phantom. As Randy recounts, for a decade after the episode containing it aired, the only version available online was a very low quality video with a mono mix on the audio. In a terrible instance of serendipity, someone discovered that its singer had it up in perfect quality on her portfolio website and made the mistake of sending it to Randy, not knowing what the ultimate ripple effect of their actions would be. Randy took to his alternate YouTube account, Worthless Toaster, to upload it to YouTube for the very first time, where it now stands at over 5 million views. Randy saw this as a sign of destiny, and Ember took over his entire life. In the same month, he made and published The Search for Remember, a short film wherein he was about to take himself out due to the song never being released, only to discover it in full quality and find a new meaning to his life. In essence, this video was autobiographical. Adding fuel to the flame, the singer not only watched this video, but liked it and added Randy on Facebook. I'm not sure how he didn't experience any dissonance, considering he was now interacting directly with the woman who voiced Ember, which obviously meant Ember wasn't real and just a cartoon character. Then again, considering how delusional he already was at this point, there's no point in really trying to pick it apart. Next up in his anthology was a video called Extinction, in which he exacts revenge for what his characters did to him in the previous video, supposedly because he lost his job over the video that was taken of the incident. The inclusion of losing his job as a part of the story isn't accidental at all. During this time, he struggled intensely with finding and holding down a job, and he left his part-time job at the supermarket. In his diary, he says, "By mid-2014, I didn't want to work anymore. I constantly envisioned hurting customers. In September, I got a full-time stock job at the general hospital my mom worked at, but quit after the first day. It was a second shift job. I just didn't fit there. The facility is enormous. There's like 16 to 20 some floors, and the stock could be for any floor in any supply closet. I would have lost my mind by Christmas." During that job search from spring 2014 through September 2014 was when I legit started thinking about suicide. The anger and hatred for the world was boiling like crazy. I got around 5 calls for jobs, but I never answered my phone or responded to emails. I didn't want to work anywhere. As the videos for the EGS anthology came out, so did their respective soundtracks, all of which were original tracks Randy composed himself and released on Bandcamp. Soon after the midpoint of 2014 was crossed, another addition to the anthology was made, a video called Extinction, which was an upload in which he graphically murdered the whale plush and toy frog he used to make his videos with up until that point. Near the end, he discovers that they had recorded a video for him in which they apologize for being so obnoxious, at which point he breaks down in regret, only to be interrupted by none other than Ember, as a painfully low-resolution cutout PNG that wasn't even from the original cartoon, but a drawing done by Randy, speaks to him and tells him that he did what he had to do and not to feel bad for his actions. While the comedic tone is retained in certain moments of the video, the more serious parts of it were dramatically outweighing them. Not only did the plot border on nonsensical, but they were rapidly crossing over into Randy's yet unexplained headcanon about Ember and the Ghost Squad. I can only wonder how the people who watched it at the time felt about it. While they probably couldn't deduce from this video that he was as troubled as he was, it was obvious from the increasingly dark themes that these videos were a cry for help. This video also marks the first official appearance of Ember in one of Randy's videos, and this is as red a flag as possible that his mental well-being was in freefall. In his goodbye video, Randy says that Extinction was one of his best performances ever, though he struggles to watch it since it shows a psychotic side of himself that even he is uncomfortable seeing. As he explained in his diary, the job at the hospital during this period was getting too much to handle, so he just quit. Unbeknownst to any of his audience at the time, during the filming of Extinction, he tore a tendon on his pinky finger. However, he couldn't get the surgery done immediately after and had to wait for 3 months before taking a medical leave. But since he quit in September, he got the surgery done in late October, quite literally on the night of Halloween. Coincidentally, he was scared of hospitals because of the hospital scenes in the original Halloween movie. While in recovery from the surgery, he recorded a video talking about what had happened.
This is what it looks like. This is my hand right now. This is the second phase of recovery. On Halloween through Monday, I had this big bandage on, which was on my social media. I posted a picture of it. I'm just like this in the picture, but this is what it looks like.
He didn't show it yet, but according to his diary, this is when he really hit rock bottom. Fortunately for him, though it wasn't much better, he got his job back at the store, so he started making some money again. Around the same time as the surgery, he started working on the next episode of the anthology, which would be titled Resurrection. The intro was noticeably more distorted than usual, and even has some cheesy, creepypasta edits of blood and other dark, edgy visuals onto the images that are regularly shown during the intro. It's been speculated that Randy suffered from some kind of stunted development, and it's very easy to see why. However serious the issues he was going through were, it's as if he had no idea how to articulate them in a mature way, so he made these videos instead. Mind you, he considered these videos to be deeply disturbing and dark in and of themselves. Now, they're obviously grim given the context that the person who made them went on to commit a heinous crime, but if that weren't the case, they'd just be cringeworthy, and he seems unaware of that to some extent. In between the blood-splattered, poorly photoshopped PNGs and acting out these plots with plushes and toys, the contrast between the adult topics and the extremely infantile execution gives off the feeling that it was made by an edgy preteen, when in actuality, it was done by someone in their early 20s who held a job and attended college. Randy Stair was a DeviantArt cringelord. Resurrection is more of the same as the previous episodes, but this time, the whale and the frog are gone, and there's only Ember as Randy walks around his house and drives. Randy began experimenting with very rudimentary animations that consisted of moving Ember's eyes and eyebrows slightly to alter her expression. A few months later, he released the follow-up to Resurrection, called Absolution, which, although it looks slightly cleaner, is about as tone-deaf and janky as the rest of his videos. It's in Absolution that he reveals that he made his version of Ember not through any conventional animation or drawing program like GIMP, but on the emblem editor on Call of Duty Black Ops 2. Likewise, he spends the majority of the video conversing with Ember, and the video concludes with him taking his own life after accepting he was never going to be able to bring the plushies he killed back to life.
I'll always be here for you, no matter what.
What the fuck?
Are you sure?
Everyone goes someday.
Interestingly enough, in the lore of his anthology videos, he kills 3 toys: the whale, the frog, and the Furby, and then he takes himself out in a very strange foreshadowing of what he eventually did. Afterward in the video, dozens of ghost girls like Ember come into frame, symbolizing Randy joining Ember's ghost squad after completing his rite of entry and initiation. The following episode breaks the pattern of strictly short film type episodes, as it mostly consists of an animated music video Randy did for a band called Send Requests, which oddly uses the 2013 PewDiePie font for its logo. The story goes that Randy and his brother had recorded a performance and some music videos for the band, and since he liked one of their songs, he decided to use it to make a demonstration of his newly acquired animation skills. The first half of the episode is called Curtain Call, and it's just a bunch of clips from the band's performance interspersed with Randy's animation. The other half is much closer to a conventional anthology entry, though this time around, it's mostly animation as opposed to the live action stuff he'd done up until this point. In the video, called Welcome to the Squad, Randy explains the up until now utterly unexplained cosmology of the EGS. Basically, Ember's Ghost Squad is like a ghost girl version of Mount Olympus from Greek mythology, and when you die, if they consider you worthy, there's a chance you might be recruited and become a ghost girl yourself. After Randy gets recruited after the end of Absolution, the Ghost Squad starts trying to recruit the frog. Weirdly enough, Randy has one of the ghost girls say it takes twice as long to resurrect and recruit gay people, and that's why they won't be bringing back the whale plush. This video took quite a while for production. As Randy put it, he sacrificed the entirety of 2015 to learn how to animate. It's also worth noting that Randy's work for Send Request was done in March of 2015, and in his diary, he details his falling out with them throughout the year. The vocalist met with me twice in October 2015 in a CVS parking lot to have me help him cheat on a college project. He wanted the music video footage to re-edit himself for a grade. I agreed without hesitation since I hadn't seen him since the day we filmed it. We filmed it in late March 2015, almost 7 months prior. Being on the night shift, I had an hour of sleep before we met around 5 p.m. He seemed happy to me. I could be wrong, but it seemed put on. It went by fast, maybe 3 minutes and he was gone. I mean, I get it, maybe he was just a little uncomfortable since we've only really talked through text messages. The second time I met him at the CVS was a few days later to retrieve my external hard drive with the footage on it. It was a totally different story. He talked my ear off with Send Request info, which thrilled me. It's what I wanted. Inside info. Little did he know I had both meetings recorded with my iPhone in my pocket. 100% start to finish. There's even some laughter from it used in the EGS intro right before Stuck in My Own Misery. Now you know one of the many secrets about that piece. As I was saying, the vocalist gave me some details about the band's future, saying they were going back to Ohio in a few weeks to record again. He was very open, which surprised me, even just rambling. But then came the talk that would be the downfall of our relationship, the music video discussion. I thought that I was an automatic lock for the new music video, but I was wrong. Me and my brother had even gotten sharp new lenses, which I told him would make the previous music video look like a joke. He seemed somewhat intrigued and said, "We want this video to be perfect," which, being the perfectionist that I am, led me to think I'm your guy. He hinted that he'd keep me in mind, but I thought for sure I'd be able to help in some form. The entire winter passes, nothing. I text him asking if they're working on anything interesting. He says something along the lines of, nah man, just hanging around. About a month and a half passed, and the bassist tweeted about checking recording a successful music video off the list. This was when the lies started. In the end, I'm glad they went with the production company because I wouldn't have been able to make it look like that. Anyways, I brushed that disappointment off and just figured doing cartoons over video was the best option. I haven't seen Andrew since that late October day. I began to grow more and more enraged with him, whether it be ignoring my texts or giving short, puny replies to lengthy messages. I got vibes that he didn't give a shit about the endless hours I spent animating a music video or my animation in general. I mentioned to him possibly spending 8 months on an animated music video. Nothing. 15 months perfecting my animation skill. Nothing. I filmed their first ever music video. 0 credit. He goes on to explain that he went back and forth with the band over online messages, trying to get the instrumental for another song of theirs, and after months of not giving him a clear answer, they eventually said the band had agreed not to give out stems from their tracks. Randy's reaction to this was to unfriend them on every social media and write the vocalist a 3-page letter detailing his feelings and struggles and how Send Request music changed his life, unprompted. Of course, the vocalist was taken aback and tried to relate to Randy, but to no avail, since Randy's goal wasn't actually to connect with him or establish a relationship. He was just after the instrumental so he could do his EGS video. It's really eerie how Randy's entire relationship with several people was conditional on them indirectly fueling his EGS obsession, almost as if he dehumanized them to a certain extent, relegating their worth to what they could provide him for his autistic animations. It's also interesting because this is one of the few times we see Randy be anything but bleak and aloof regarding the outside world. It's in moments like these that it's visible how truly alien he is to people around him. He thinks that recording everyday conversations without other people's knowledge is a fine thing to do, and secretly using it in one of his videos is a funny secret and not kind of creepy. He also expects a band that's trying to commercialize their music to completely understand him taking 8 months to make a music video for them, with the original character he created based on an all but forgotten Danny Phantom villain from well over a decade prior, despite his animation skills being not very good. He described their falling out as his dreams being crushed and that they made a grave mistake in wronging him, while also mentioning that he sent the vocalist yet another page-long message as a response. He couldn't be more out of touch with other human beings if he tried to. He concludes his rants by saying that since he wasn't given the stems for the song he wanted to, he planned to forever ruin it by associating it with the crime he began to plan around that time. He circumvented the band and went to the person responsible for producing the record, and ultimately spent over $200 to get the mastered stems just so that he could use it in his animation. Mind you, he's working part-time on the night shift at a supermarket at this point, so $200 is a lot of money, yet he gleefully splurges it on something as inconsequential as that. It's likely that after his blowing up of the vocalist DMs, the band decided to look a little further into Randy's online presence, only to discover how unhinged he was based on the videos he'd been uploading on his YouTube channel, and they immediately privated the video Randy had recorded for them that was up on their channel. In 2015, Randy grew increasingly wary of having his online presence scrutinized by his family members or people who knew him in real life, leading him to change his name on everything he had online. However, this wasn't the only reason. In a document from much later, he reveals that during this period something happened, which Randy called Randygate, that signed the death sentence for the Pioneers Productions era. It started with one of his fans, who had written lewd fan fiction about him in late 2014. While Randy tried to act as if he appreciated it, he couldn't hold the act up for very long and eventually blocked him. This fan, whom we'll call Dave, started ranting on Twitter to other Pioneers Productions fans who took his side and attacked Randy online. Even though Randy eventually made peace with them, it further demotivated him to keep making the same kind of content he used to. As he slowly pivoted to EGS material, 2 new fans did get on board, Sammy and Haley. Being completely unaccustomed to having fans, Randy engaged with them directly, which was a grave mistake since this made them extremely devoted to his online presence, liking and sharing everything he did obsessively. In total, there were around 5 to 8 people in this online bubble of dedicated EGS followers. This began annoying Randy almost immediately, as he was unintentionally getting roped into their lives and exchanging DMs with them. This was set into hyperdrive once one of the fans started frequently threatening to do something drastic on their Twitter account, publicly tagging Randy to get his attention. Being the misanthropic loner he was, with the dark tendencies he was already struggling with, it was excruciatingly difficult for Randy to try and do the reasonable thing, which was talking this person down from what they had in mind to do, or telling the police. A particularly exhausting part part of this whole ordeal was that this fan of Randy's would often disappear for days, causing Randy to spend his entire workday refreshing Twitter constantly to see if they'd posted. Eventually, it became too much for him and he blocked her, earning him yet another wave of hate from his remaining followers. As a consequence of him ostracizing himself from the bubble, he stopped doing live streams and further distanced himself from YouTube. But eventually, this bubble of people had a very different perspective as they collectively interpreted Randy's newer, darker videos as veiled threats to their lives. In mid to late 2015, he made a new Twitter account called EGS Andrew, where he frequently posted cryptic updates on the general EGS phenomenon. Around the same time, he made a wiki page for EGS, and in it, we can find some additional headcanon Randy wrote. Founded in the 1980s, EGS is one of the most cherished squads in the afterlife. Short for Ember's Ghost Squad, Ember McLean founded the organization not long after perishing in a house fire. During recruiting, all souls are fair game. Although the squad's traits vary extremely, recruiters generally search for lost cause souls, typically people battling depression or have become outcasts in their daily environment. Lost causes who finally earn their chance to be who they truly are make the EGS one of the strongest squads in the afterlife. There are occasions where recruiters physically reach out to those amongst the living, offering a way out of their torment and misery. In these circumstances, recruiting is cleverly executed as to not make society aware of the spiritual forces overshadowing the earth. There are rare circumstances where the EGS will purposely plan a sudden recruitment for an individual whose traits perfectly fit into their system. The appearance of an EGS recruiter is masked by shadows on the face and skin. Only the eyes and clothing are visible, surrounded by darkness and their own unique hue. There are hundreds of recruiters in the EGS. Only the best of the best are promoted. When recruited by EGS, your features may vary based on your life's interests, mental scars, and emotional traits. Each recruit has the ability to fly, turn intangible, sing decently, travel to Earth, perform basic hypnosis, play the guitar, and travel to other dimensions. By practicing and performing spells, recruits can improve their skills and reach new levels in the squad. The book, So You're No Longer Living, the EGS Guide to the Afterlife, is distributed to new recruits. Randy also wrote lore for each of the EGS recruiters he created, but they're pointlessly long and detailed for no reason. Strangely enough, he specifies that regardless of whether someone was male or female during their life on Earth, upon joining the EGS, they become female souls. And he also makes a point to say that all of the members are at least 7 feet tall, including the frog toy from his videos, which he thoughtfully includes as one of the recruiters. Some of the characters were even 10 feet tall, and it's difficult to understand why this was a focal point for Randy. It's been speculated that he based these characters either on different aspects of himself or on the personalities of the people who were a part of his life, potentially the friends of his who tragically died a few years prior. However, it's very difficult to discern any meaningful information just by looking into Randy's entries on the wiki. He also made several Twitter accounts, one called EGS World as a main hub for all EGS related things, and a few others for each respective member of the squad. What's even more disturbing is that Randy actively managed and posted from all of these accounts, making them interact with one another as if they were real people. While he was initially pleased about leaving his job at the hospital and going back to working at the supermarket, and even happier that he got to work the night shift, his glee was rapidly deteriorating as the job wore him down. At first, it was alright, but it quickly became overwhelming with stress from management. The job isn't hard, it just drags. Non-order nights feel like an eternity. I've long exhausted my music library. The best part is there's no one to bother you. I've even had shifts where it was just me and the floor guy who leaves at 3 a.m. and me all night. It's peaceful, but man do I get bored. You level the store and fill holes or do backstock on non-order nights, it gets old fast. 2016 begins with the last entry to the anthology series, Abyss. The video is just a monologue by Randy, in which he does a little bit of an impression of Heath Ledger's Joker while trying to sound as menacing as possible, while the camera either zooms on his face or pans around his room, showing his My Little Pony memorabilia, the innumerable images of Ember he has plastered on the walls, along with posters from the movie Frozen and the Angry Video Game Nerd, the poster for which was actually signed by the nerd himself.
Will see us as mentally ill, introverts, weirdos, screwballs, creeps, psychopaths. I see us as standout gifted souls.
Again, it would be cringy if it wasn't a real sign of his psychological decay. As Randy had already explained in his diary, as early as 2014, his rage had been building up, and he was already planning to commit some kind of violent crime. But even he had no idea what it was, or even if he was actually going to do it, or just take himself out and leave it at that. It seems that, by the end of 2015, he already had an idea of not just what to do, but when he would do it. One of his cryptic tweets signaled it would happen on May 7th, 2019, with no further clarification. While the first half of the year didn't have any significant updates, according to Randy's goodbye video, it was during this relatively quiet period that he was completely sucked into another obsession, Columbine. According to him, everyone saw the perpetrators of that crime as monsters when he saw them as the true victims, and in his words, grew to love them and see them as an inspiration. He was particularly enamored with one of the criminals' t-shirts, which said natural selection, obviously striking a nerve in Randy, who immediately associated it with his beliefs about tragedies, like them being inevitable and fated to happen. In order to further learn about what had happened, he made an account on a discussion forum dedicated to the shooting, and his profile is still up to this day. While most of his posts aren't noteworthy and just express an interest in learning more about it, a few give a little insight into whatever remained of the person Randy used to be before his obsession with Ember completely seized him. In a post, he expresses disbelief that the parents of the perpetrators didn't pick up on the signs, which can be chalked up to Randy projecting his own situation onto their stories. At this point, he wasn't trying very hard at all to be secretive about what he was up to. For example, he got himself 3 natural selection t-shirts, and still, no one picked up on it, leading him to resent them further. In a much more revealing post, he says the following. The biggest question of all, though, is would any of the Harris family forgive Eric? A big question I've always wondered is, if the shooter's family saw their sons in the afterlife, would they forgive them? However, since he no longer went to school, he began feeling discouraged from doing anything related to education, since his college campus was either too secure or had too few clusters of people for him to effectively target anyone. And ultimately, he began contemplating just taking himself out in his room and being done with it. That is, until he decided to target the supermarket he worked at. After all, he already hated most of the people he worked with. Also inspired by the perpetrators of Columbine, near the end of 2016, Randy decided to start documenting his thoughts in a diary, as well as compiling everything he'd ever made online and his journey to the final acts of his story, something he dubbed the Suit tapes. On November 23rd, he began writing what would ultimately pan out to be his autobiographical manifesto and testament. He opens with the following words. I have no regrets for what I may do or what I have done. I am who I am, and no human can take that away from me. I'm an EGS recruit. You're all worthless humans. One day, you'll all see things my way, especially when our ghost squad invades your pathetic, putrid planet, and you become our slaves for the rest of your lives. I will not stop. I will not change. I will not cower. I will fight for the squad and do what I've set out to do. I am Andrew Blaze. If there ever was a time in which someone could have intervened and stopped Randy from doing what he planned to do, that time was past when he began his diary. He spends a few paragraphs declaring his admiration for Eric Harris and begins to essentially rewrite the story of his life, adapting it to his current self, claiming he's always been this way and hated humanity since the beginning, which is clearly untrue. In an unintentionally pithy segment, immediately after he's done pontificating about how he hates the world, he begins expressing his distaste for his own identity, particularly his name. He explains that he's always wanted to change his name to Andrew since middle school when he learned about Hurricane Andrew, and explains the meanings he ascribed to the name. He believes this is the name he's fated to have as a ghost girl in the afterlife, which is ironic considering the name Andrew comes directly from Greek, and it means man. In another document released a while later, he mentions the incident that prompted him to want to change his name in the first place. One time when my mom sat down and asked me if I was okay due to a post on my Facebook that my aunt saw, it was a post saying something like, I wish I could be somewhere else besides this world and to just get away from everything. It'd make me happier. I can't remember fully what I wrote, but that was the gist of it, and it really upset my mom. I never got confronted about anything in terms of depression since then. After that happened, I completely removed anyone who knew me personally off of my social media. They were holding me back. This was also around the time when I changed my name. I wasn't Randy Stare anymore. I was Andrew Blaze. I knew full well that no one would be able to find any social media if I used a different name. And later on, I realized that Andrew Blaze was, in fact, my spiritual name. At least I'm 85% certain. Might be Rachel something, but Andrew Blaze clicked. Going back to his diary, after declaring his hatred for people who smoke weed, he reveals what he thinks he'll be up to after he becomes part of the EGS. I can't stop envisioning myself in the Ghost Squad, being one of them, being happy. Recruiting humans after returning from the grave, manipulating and seducing humans with my feminine charm, and then brutally attacking them with a huge grin on my face. The power, the revenge.
There we go.
The
That's
Ghost Squad. I want it. And soon, it will be a reality. While he had seldom broached this topic in other instances, he begins talking about his perspective on religion, saying Christianity is a fairy tale, but that there are gods and goddesses. However, he follows up with a more uncertain outlook, saying that life could be a series of other things, a simulation where only one person actually exists, punishment, or how he prefers to see it, a mission. In his mind, he was sent from another dimension to Earth to learn some kind of lesson. He repeats the aforementioned May 7th date, but doubts he's even going to be able to resist his urges to do something drastic for that long. While the EGS channel kept him going, it was getting harder for him as he became increasingly aware of the limitations he faced trying to make animated videos mostly on his own. But he had been able to hire the help of a voice actor or two, who won't be named and had no idea that Randy would do what he did. But as far as the animation itself, he was having a very hard time getting it all done in a timely manner, which is unsurprising considering how depressed he was at this stage. On the same day, he writes about how he began to hate the mere thought of eating, regularly going 20 hours with no food for the past year and a half. But soon after, his complaints about how miserable he was turned into claims that he loved the darkness that tormented him, and he proceeded to write threats to the people who worked with him at the supermarket, even calling them racial epithets despite them being the same race as him. It appears his resentment for them was an extension of his resentment for having to hold down a job to fulfill his parents' expectations of him, which he saw as a hindrance to his animation work on the EGS projects. He only writes again a couple of weeks later, announcing that he would be shooting a handgun the next day. He reported it though, and the footage has been archived. In the same passage, he says he wanted to go the same way Ember went, in a fire, but only if he's very sure beforehand that he will, indeed, be passing away, hence the need for a gun. He also mentions another character alongside Ember, Mackenzie, one of the other members of the EGS, who became Randy's de facto muse as Ember took on the role of a more distant goddess. He doesn't make another entry for a total of 3 weeks, and though he begins the next one with the typical topics, he eventually starts talking about his parents again. My parents don't seem to have a clue as to what goes on in my head. 90% of the time, I'm as pale as a lifeless corpse. In the end, if my mom says, "Why didn't I see the signs?" then she should just stab herself for being so stupid. I mean, honestly, I don't go anywhere unless I have to. I don't speak to anyone unless spoken to. I make 0 friends by choice. I dress from head to foot in black. Even my bra and leggings are black. Find those yet? What about my black panties? I always look like a ghoul sucked the joy and happiness out of my face. Hell, the blind followers on my social media see the dark stuff from my thoughts on the internet anyway, but little do they know, it's actually real. In the next entry, Randy talks about the stems from the official Remember song he got from the woman who sang it, and reveals that he inserted subliminal messages related to EGS throughout the entire track, and revels in the thought of people downloading it and sharing it with no idea that his voice is actually in it. Eventually, he gets more into detail about Mackenzie, essentially establishing her as his afterlife girlfriend, which is a bit odd since he was now in his mid-20s and she was forever 16 years old, as per the EGS lore. He even explicitly says the infamous "age is just a number" line. Before the year's end, Randy records the first entry to his tapes, the audio track titled "Trying to Make Sense of It All." He attempts to pinpoint when exactly the chain of events began that ultimately led to the downfall of his sanity over the course of an hour and a half. In it, he complains that he's cursed not to be popular, but is sure that EGS will skyrocket in popularity once he's gone. Around the halfway point, he says he began masturbating every day to the thought of having a woman's body before breaking down in tears, imagining his afterlife ghost girlfriend, Mackenzie, talking to him.
No matter where I go, driving in a car, just around people, or just sitting here thinking, she's right outside, I feel her around me all the time. I think it's okay. I'm here. I know you can't go away your life yet. You know, you still got things to do. I'm here. I'll wait for you.
In late January 2017, Randy finally managed to find himself an animator willing to work with him, though it's not yet clear what that work is going to be. A day later, he goes back to idealistically fantasizing about his entry, or as he puts it, return to the EGS. Words cannot describe how happy I'll be not to have to eat, breathe, blink, or poop ever again. I virtually eat nothing nowadays. I'm 132 pounds of skin and bone. My arms are literally as thin as the EGS drawings. I want to chop my penis off so bad. They're so disgusting. Why do guys like drawing those putrid things so much? I can't wait to have my penis and butthole taken away and have my pussy and breast back. 24 years without them. 24 years! I miss my white skin, leggings, and long hair. I miss not having to breathe. I miss not being able to feel physical pain. This body is a punishment. Most of all, I miss my cartoon-like form. Bodies in this dimension are tolerable, but they're nothing compared to that dimension. Somewhere, someone is laughing at all the things I'm saying, like, this is without a doubt the stupidest psychotic retard on Earth. Ha! Keep laughing, pal. Y'all see for yourselves when your time comes. And for some of you, I'll see you soon. I guess I'm that someone somewhere, and right now, I gotta concur with his self-description here. It's also interesting to note that it's not that he believes that Ember is a real, ethereal, three-dimensional being that exists in the afterlife, who happens to be depicted in a cartoon. He actually thinks the afterlife, or at least the EGS, are cartoons, and he will also become one. He continues to claim he hopes his death inspires some kind of worldwide EGS cult that will take many souls, but as he often does, that idea, he starts reiterating his rant about how he finds it hard to believe his mom hasn't noticed the signs he'd been deliberately putting up with his strange behavior. Reading this diary makes it increasingly clear how much Randy yearned for attention from his parents and how his identity was affected by it.
I can't.
They just didn't notice. The aforementioned age thing wasn't creepy enough. addition to the squad. I would kill to be able to lure girls away and brainwash them into caring about nothing but EGS. Words cannot describe my love for girls. Girls are my life. Guys, on the other hand, are absolutely disgusting. On Earth, you're either born as a male or female. There's no in between. Yes, you are born with a sexual preference, but you're still a male or a female. You can't be neutral. My soul is female, but my mortal body is male, which is what I had to be sent here as in order to realize how wrong it was. Over the course of the next few pages of his diary, we can glean that the animator and voice actress he's hired are working on a project that follows a previous one of Randy's. In the first volume of the EGS tapes, which was released in December 2016, there are 2 tracks called Conspiring a Massacre, and the project Randy had them on would be, well, the massacre itself. A few more pages after, Randy declares his hatred for the elderly and claims that the conventional path of life, getting with a girl, buying a house, and working a job you like, doesn't apply to him because his dream girl is Mackenzie and she is a ghost. Come February, and Randy's writings get its head first, with him saying that he will definitely not be able to wait until 2019 to do something about his situation. Meanwhile, it seems three people were frequently posting about Randy on Twitter after he included something in his videos that referenced them in a threatening way. However, it's very difficult to figure out what exactly happened since we only really have Randy's writings here to go off of, and they're not exactly cohesive. Either way, these people on Twitter can be said to be the first and only people to put 2 and 2 together and realize Randy was actively fantasizing about doing something violent in real life. A few days later, Randy wrote about potentially suffering from body dysmorphic disorder and OCD as he compulsively took selfies and adjusted his hair, claiming that he never felt satisfied with how he looked. Around this time, his depression was stronger than ever due to the animator he hired having to quit due to the theme of the video Randy was pitching him. He mourns potentially never finishing that last EGS project and complains that he gets little to no engagement on the social media accounts, being upset that his tweets never even get to 10 likes. He specifies that it's just beyond his understanding how EGS, which he considers worthy of being a global hit phenomenon, isn't more popular than YouTube channels like Markiplier, PewDiePie, and Jacksepticeye, saying what they do isn't a real job. It seems criticizing the quality of what those guys do for a living made Randy become a little self-conscious because he follows that up by defensively explaining himself for the poor quality of the animations uploaded to his channel, concluding his rant saying, "I feel like I get little to no respect for how much work goes into just one video. I'd watch it if the animation wasn't cheap. Do you wipe your ass with diamonds? Do butlers serve you dinner? Jump off a 2,000-foot cliff. When you hit the final stretch, you would have lived if gravity was bad. I'm all for free speech, but when it's a comment like that, you shouldn't even be allowed in front of a TV." At the beginning of March, Randy makes another entry declaring his deep-seated desire to reproduce Columbine. But
He's
with a
all over
twist.
here.
His intention is to victimize thousands, not just the average 3 to 12 that an incident like that manages to get. However, he fears that due to his bad luck, he'll get tackled by someone and won't be able to do any damage until the police arrive. Acknowledging that his chances of success in a crowded place are slim to none, he goes back to contemplating a supermarket breakdown as a target, and begins to specify which of the employees he intended to prioritize during his rampage. To further enhance the degree of cowardice, he decides he would strike during a break, when there'd be no chance an armed customer could do anything to stop him, and while the other employees would be too distracted by something else to even consider that Randy was up to no good. He expresses that the 2 worst things that could happen are if he either survives or gets overpowered by a customer, and even mentions being sickened by the thought of the headlines about the incident if his plan somehow failed. It's very clear that despite his delusions and depression being the driving forces behind everything here, a lot of it is also Randy craving attention and being so desperate to control how he's seen, even post-mortem. In a passage he wrote soon after, he said, "I've always desired to be famous, to make a name for myself and inspire others. Sometimes you gotta do evil deeds to be famous. It's fate, nothing more, nothing less. Granted, shooting 2 or 3 co-workers in the store and taking your own isn't national newsworthy, but it gets your name out there."
Criminal.
While meandering about how his plans for EGS were too grandiose given the very
That was
limited
a good
time he
try.
planned to be alive and working on it for, he
That was a
begins
good
once
try.
again fantasizing about how people will react to his
You gotta
plans.
admit, that was a
I
good
hate
try.
the thought of aging. I'd rather die young than be forever young.
We
The older
attacked
fans
them.
are
I
obsessive.
swear. I don't know what my team is doing.
If you're ever struggling to find yourself and can't see your future, then go for it. Who's going to stop you from completing your destiny? Maybe some of you will end up in the EGS with me. I'll welcome you with open, girly arms. He immediately pivots to another hateful tirade against the band for not giving him the stems from their song, before he reveals that due to his demotivated state and his fear of potentially fumbling his plan, he's considering not targeting anyone anymore and just joining the squad by himself when September rolled around. He cites his drive to return to his pre-birth state of ghost girlhood as the primary reason for what he intends to do. When envisioning those who will mourn his passing, he says the following: people will see it as a tragedy, but it'll set me free. Be happy for people who do what I'll do. They're free from this putrid world. Life isn't meant for everyone. Accept it. We're all born different. You're free to do whatever you want with your life. You're in control. If they want you on medication for depression or suicidal thoughts, don't let a drug tell you how you should feel. You're not you if you rely on drugs. This is also ironic since when he committed his crime, Randy self-medicated, but we'll get to that later. For the very first time in over 100 pages at this point, Randy contemplates going after his own family. First, he riles himself up, saying it's unfathomable they still haven't noticed how troubled their son is. Then, he says he's been debating doing something to his own family before doing what he plans to do, but displays an unusual amount of hesitance at the idea. Whereas he said he's wanted to do a plethora of things to an innumerable amount of people, his family, despite how much he despises his parents, are the first time he shows a sign of fear of the potential consequences, saying, "I've been debating for the longest time whether or not to take someone in the house before taking myself out." Here's the biggest reason why I keep holding off on that thought. If there are prices in the afterlife to pay for killing X amount of people, that is punishable by X amount of years. Imagine if one person costs you 100 years of torture or isolation. Yes, I am 100% positive the EGS exists, but there's no telling what could happen in general terms of killing people. I've waited 24 and a half years to join the Ghost Squad. I can't pile on anymore. I don't know, there might not be any prices to pay for all I know, but better safe than sorry. It's as if his family-related issues are the only thing that supersedes his general anger and lack of empathy for other people. However, he cuts this topic short as his nihilistic thoughts flare up again, and he begins talking about how everything is meaningless. So much so that he's even willing to forego his concerns with becoming infamous before he crosses over to the dark side. He even questions his own designs for the EGS content, since in his set of personal beliefs, whatever he's depicting through the EGS videos, he'll be able to experience firsthand if he just joins the squad already. Just a few paragraphs later, however, the EGS psychosis comes back stronger than ever, as Randy writes about how the squad will descend upon Earth and either enslave or take everybody out before the beginning of the 23rd century. And human beings stand no chance because ghost girls are immune to atomic bombs. He immediately bookends this series of statements by claiming he's not insane, which I suppose means he was still self-aware to some degree about how outlandish his writings were. But I guess being self-aware was of little avail when it came to making him actually realize he was out of touch with reality, since he goes right back to EGS talk about how he came from another dimension, and how Froggy, yes, the toy from his videos, is now a real member of EGS, meaning it wasn't just a sketch for him, it was a documentary. Despite his obsession with Ember not losing an iota of momentum, it was starting to become as a reason for him to stick around. Animation required more effort from him than he was comfortable putting in, and no other animator wanted any part of EGS, even if they were offered decent payment, all of which made Randy struggle a lot during this period. Besides visualizing his afterlife, one of the things that soothed his mental state was imagining a world in which he was famous through the works of EGS, and people crying and cheering him on in a theater while watching a documentary about him and his life's work. Despite having every intention to leave this world as soon as possible, he made it very clear that he hoped someone else would pick up the mantle for the EGS content after his passing. After attacking people who do self-harm, he explains his view of why human beings are on Earth in the first place.